The transmission came through every frequency at once. It was a signal so powerful that it broke through military encryption, civilian channels, and even the emergency broadcast systems of 100 human colony worlds. The message was simple and delivered in cold, mechanical precision. Humans of the Sol Federation, you have expanded into territory claimed by the Vorthan Empire. You will cease all military operations. You will surrender your fleets. You will submit to Vorthan governance. You have 7 standard cycles to comply. Failure will result in complete annihilation. Admiral Chen Wei stood on the bridge of the ISS Defiance, humanity's largest warship. She was a woman of 60 years, with gray hair pulled tight behind her head and eyes that had seen 3 wars. Around her, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. The holographic display showed the message replaying, the alien symbols translated into standard English by the ship's AI. 7 days, muttered Captain Rodriguez, her second in command. They gave us 7 days to surrender everything we've built over 3 centuries. Admiral Chun said nothing. She watched the display, her mind calculating distances, fleet positions, and supply lines. The Vorthan Empire had been a mystery until 2 years ago. Humanity had encountered their scout ships near the Kepler expanse. Those first meetings had been peaceful, almost friendly. The Vorthans had seemed curious about humanity, asking questions about their technology and culture. Now Chun understood why. They had been studying humanity, learning their weaknesses, counting their ships. How many vessels do they have? She asked quietly. The tactical officer, a young man named Lieutenant Park, pulled up the sensor data. Our long-range scanners detected their fleet approaching from the Sigma Quadrant. Preliminary count suggests approximately 8,000 warships, Admiral, including 12 planet killers. The bridge went silent. Humanity's entire combined fleet numbered around 3,000 vessels. They had no planet killers. They had nothing that could match the sheer firepower the Vorthans were bringing. They want us to surrender, said Rodriguez bitterly. And maybe we should. Maybe we should think about our people, our families. Admiral Chun turned to face her captain. There was no anger in her expression, only a calm certainty that had been forged in decades of service. Captain, do you know why humanity survived the colony wars? Do you know why we won against the Syndicate when they outnumbered us 5-1? Rodriguez shook her head. Because we never learned how to surrender. It's not in our nature. Every time someone pushed us down, we got back up. Every time someone told us we couldn't win, we found a way. Chun walked to the main display and enlarged the tactical map. The Vorthans think they know us. They studied our technology, our population numbers, our fleet size. But they made one critical mistake. What mistake, Admiral? Chun smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made Rodriguez's spine straighten with sudden hope. They thought those numbers meant something. They thought war was mathematics. But war isn't mathematics. War is will. War is spirit. And humanity has never lost a war of will. Within hours, Admiral Chun had sent her response to the Vorthan ultimatum. It was broadcast on the same frequencies, ensuring that every human colony and every Vorthan ship would hear it. To the Vorthan Empire, your demands have been received and considered. We decline. If you want our worlds, come and take them. But know this, humanity does not surrender. We never have. We never will. And for every ship you send, we will make you pay a price so terrible that your children's children will remember the day you threatened Sol. The response from the Vorthan Emperor came quickly. It was filled with outrage and disbelief. No species had ever refused their demands. No civilization had ever been foolish enough to resist the Empire's might. They called humanity arrogant. They called them suicidal. They promised destruction so complete that not even ruins would remain. Admiral Chun ignored the threats. She had work to do. The next 5 days became a blur of activity across human space. Every shipyard worked around the clock. Ships that had been scheduled for decommission were rushed back into service. Civilian freighters were retrofitted with weapons and armor. Mining vessels were converted into makeshift bombers. But Chun knew that ships alone wouldn't be enough. She needed something else. She needed to change the rules of the war before it began. On the fourth day, she gathered the commanders of all major fleets for a strategy session aboard the Defiance. They came from every corner of human space, men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity. Many of them looked worried. Some looked afraid, but none of them spoke of surrender. "The Vorthans expect us to meet them in open battle," Chun began. "They expect us to form neat lines and throw ourselves against their superior numbers. They expect us to fight their kind of war." She paused, looking at each commander in turn. "We will not do that." Admiral Morrison of the Third Fleet leaned forward. "Then, what do you suggest? We fight our kind of war. Humanity didn't conquer the stars by being the strongest or the fastest. We did it by being clever, by being adaptable, by refusing to accept the limits others placed on us." Chun activated a holographic display showing the Vorthan fleet's projected approach. They're coming in one massive formation. 8,000 ships moving together like a hammer. They want to crush us with one overwhelming blow. "And we can't stop a hammer that size," said Admiral Tanaka of the Fifth Fleet. "No," Chun agreed. "We can't, but we don't have to stop it. We just have to break it apart." She highlighted several points along the Vorthan approach route. Over the past century, humanity has seeded thousands of automated mining stations throughout the outer territories. Most of them are dormant, waiting for future expansion. I've ordered all of them activated. The commanders looked confused. Mining stations weren't weapons. Chum continued. Each station has been modified to produce a specific kind of debris cloud. When the Vorthan fleet passes through these regions, they'll encounter fields of micro-projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. Their shields will hold, but their sensors will be blinded. Their formation will scatter to avoid the debris. And when they scatter, Morrison asked, beginning to understand, "That's when we strike." Chum zoomed the display to show hundreds of small craft hidden in asteroid fields and behind moons throughout the region. "We've positioned over 2,000 strike teams along their route, small ships, fast ships, each one carrying nuclear-tipped torpedoes. When the Vorthan formation breaks apart, we attack them in pieces. We hit them from every direction at once. We make them pay for every light year they travel." Admiral Tanaka shook her head slowly, but she was smiling now. "This isn't a battle plan. It's an ambush the size of a solar system." "The Vorthans think they're fighting a fleet," Chun replied. "They're actually fighting every human being who ever refused to quit. Every colonist who built a home on a hostile world. Every soldier who stood their ground against impossible odds. We're not just going to resist them. We're going to make them fear us." The seventh day arrived. The Vorthan fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, exactly as expected. 8,000 warships, their hulls gleaming with the confidence of an empire that had never known defeat. The Vorthan War Admiral, a being named Korvax Thul, stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his fleet advance. He expected to find human ships fleeing or perhaps attempting some desperate last stand near their homeworld. Instead, he found empty space. "Where are they?" he demanded. "Where is their fleet?" His sensor officer's voice carried a note of confusion. "Scanning now, War Admiral. No human vessels detected in this sector." Korvax felt a moment of satisfaction. Perhaps the humans had finally come to their senses. Perhaps they had realized the futility of resistance. Then the debris fields hit. The first wave came from nowhere. Billions of tiny projectiles screaming through space at impossible speeds. The Vorthan ship's shields flared as they deflected the impacts, but the projectiles kept coming. The fleet's tight formation began to spread out as captains maneuvered to avoid the densest concentrations. "What is this?" Korvax shouted. Before anyone could answer, The first nuclear torpedo struck his flanking destroyers, then another, then 100 more. The torpedoes came from asteroids, from comets, from what had appeared to be dead satellites drifting in space. Human ships emerged from hiding places that the Vorthons hadn't even known to look for. The battle that followed would later be called the Harvest of the Void by human historians. The Vorthons tried to regroup, but every time they formed a defensive position, more attacks came from unexpected directions. Human ships struck and retreated, never engaging in the direct combat that the Vorthons excelled at. For 3 days, the running battle continued. The Vorthons lost ships by the hundreds. Their fleet, which had been a single overwhelming force, became scattered across light years of space. Their planet killers, the terror weapons that had conquered 100 worlds, were hunted down one by suicide squadrons who didn't care if they survived, as long as they took their targets with them. On the 4th day of battle, Korvax Thol received a transmission from Admiral Chun. Her face appeared on his display, calm and composed despite the chaos of war. "War Admiral," she said, "your fleet has been reduced by 60%. Your planet killers are destroyed. Your supply lines are cut. Your reinforcements won't arrive in time to save you." She paused, letting the reality of his situation sink in. "Now I have a message for you to send to your Emperor." Korvax's hands trembled with rage. "What message?" "Tell him that humanity demands the Vorthon Empire's surrender. Tell him that if he refuses, we will do to his worlds what we've done to his fleet. Tell him that we showed him mercy by asking first." Chun leaned forward. "And tell him that next time, we won't ask." The transmission ended. Korvax stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Around him, his officers waited in silence. He thought about his empire, about the centuries of conquest that had built it. He thought about the hundreds of species that had submitted rather than fight. Then he thought about the humans who had looked at certain destruction and answered with defiance. For the first time in his career, War Admiral Korvax Thol understood what fear truly meant. 1 week later, the Vorthon Emperor signed the surrender documents aboard the ISS Defiance. The terms were harsh but fair. Humanity demanded reparations, demanded that Vorthon expansion be halted, demanded recognition of human sovereignty. Admiral Chun stood at the signing ceremony, watching the alien emperor struggle to contain his humiliation. She felt no joy in his defeat. She felt only the weight of the lives lost in the battle and the responsibility of ensuring they hadn't died for nothing. As the emperor left the ship, he turned to face her one final time. "How?" he asked simply. "How did you do this?" Chun considered the question. She thought about the miners who had volunteered to turn their stations into weapons. She thought about the pilots who had flown suicide missions without hesitation. She thought about the soldiers, the engineers, the civilians who had refused to accept the impossible. "We're human," she said finally. "We don't know how to lose." The emperor had no response to that. He left in silence, carrying with him the knowledge that the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity was no longer a small federation struggling to survive. They were a power to be reckoned with, a species that had stared into the abyss and made the abyss blink. And somewhere in the void, Admiral Chun knew that other empires were watching. Other civilizations were learning. The message had been sent loud and clear across the stars. Humanity would not be conquered. Not today. Not ever.